Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fiction genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Orphan Black. A very, very good episode. We're kind of focused a little bit more on the sciencey aspects of Orphan Black. A little bit that seems the main focus of this episode, because it's we kind of find out more about the specific gene that is inside of Kira that allows her to heal herself, which you can presume it's also in Helena's twin babies as well. But at the very least, it's actually connected to Giannis. Giannis is the name of the thing in the boy or the man that's in the woods. Which everyone would refer to him as a thing. He's kind of going a little wild, and he attacked one person, and now initially Westmoreland wanted him captured, but some of the people are just kind of like, no, because everyone's in a frenzy. The people that know the truth are trying to act like everything's normal, but obviously it's coming undone at the scenes because everyone's like, we know it's not a bear. Everyone on the island isn't stupid. Mud is trying to protect him because it is someone that... It doesn't seem like they're necessarily 100% connected. It's just she saw what they did to him. Like, that Giannis wasn't always like this, but it's because of the experiments they performed with him. I guess she knew him a little later on in the experiments. Maybe it's like stuff they did to him much later on that kind of made him violent and kind of uncontrollable like he is. Like, it doesn't seem like he even talks and stuff. So obviously, as we know, a lot of his body is malformed and not fully developed. I mean, I don't think they've actually said exactly when they started experimenting on him. They were like, yeah, he was a boy. So I'm guessing the same age as Kira is, kind of roughly now. They started experimenting on him. But Mud cares for him to the point she actually let him out. That's the reason why he's out, loose now. So she wanted to help him, but it's just... He cares for Mud, but it's like, because there's a point he was grabbing onto her, but he didn't hurt her. But I think it still terrified Mud to the point where she was like, that's not the person I know. Like, that's not the Giannis I cared about. He's just kind of going wild, and there's no helping him, I guess. Obviously, Delphine's kind of back on the island for a little bit, kind of bringing in... Casima's still... it's always been a part of Casima's relationship with Delphine. She kind of dives into it this episode of, how it's like, yeah... I always push too hard and you always do stuff without my consent. It's like, and even though, it's like either we have to accept that that's what our relationship is like, or we just call it quits here and now. And it's like, well, I guess that means we're kind of in it for the long haul. Delphine's kind of going back to not telling Cosima everything because she's like, oh, why I'm trying to get to Geneva so badly because that's where Felix and Adele are looking into this whole Neolution thing. I'm thinking, at the very least, because before I was wondering why she's not telling everyone when you're not telling Sarah. I guess the point is it's that situation of not everyone is supposed to know every single detail of the plan. So if some people are completely in the dark in some aspects, they won't kind of inadvertently reveal the hand. It's like, so if they don't know everything that Delphine's kind of doing, then it'll be kind of kept a little more secret and less lies you have to keep up with and stuff like that. At least that's my mentality. If anything does happen, you're kind of in the dark, plausible deniability type of thing. At least that's how I'm feeling like Delphine's doing. I mean, because once again, even though she hasn't always, it doesn't always come off that way, Delphine, everything she's ever done has been for Casima's sake, because she legitimately does love Cosima. I mean, I appreciate they kind of go back to the whole Cosima revealing to Delphine that she's sick. Back in season 1 when she found out about the whole them being property and everything, Delphine's like, you're not property to them. They don't own what makes you you. You still own who you are. Your laugh, that beautiful brain of everything that your essence, who you are, is not something that they could ever own, because you are you and you will always own yourself. You're not owned by anyone but you, And so much stuff went down this episode. Another thing too, because I brought it up last week's episode, where does Rachel fall in this whole situation? Now, her and her mom in the same room again. They haven't been in the same... I mean, to our recollection, at least when it comes to the show, they have not been in the same room again subsequently since the whole, stabbing her last season thing. So this is their first time being in a room together. And she's like, oh, yeah, Kira is in our care, and Rachel's like, what? No, and grabs like Susan and pokes at her wound. Is like, no, Kira is in my care. I told you guys that the corporate side can handle the science. So it seems like she is being a little protective of like, no, Kira is mine to take care of. She's my business, not yours, not anyone else's. So it does seem like I said, like, it seems like she is aware of what's going on, what the plan is for Kira and everything. At the very least, I assume so, but I'm still wondering whether she really understands what this means. Like, it does seem like she does legitimately care for Kira, but the thing is, like, is that genuine care, or is it just the fact of the matter is, like, you know, does she look at Kira as just a second opportunity? And it's like, is it like out of selfish reasons of like, oh, I finally have someone to actually hold on to? Because she has very few people in her life that truly care for her. And even Kira like shows affection towards her, even when everyone else doesn't. So I don't know. We still got to wait and see how that kind of develops, whether there's anything to that or not. Because of what like pisses Cosima off the most, it's like, yo, like, you did this to a young, innocent boy. You messed with him and turned him into what's here in front of us. And who's to say you're not going to do the exact same thing to my niece? Like, she's just an innocent little girl and you're just going to experiment on her like it's nothing. She's even telling Susan, like, you got to stop this. Even Ira's being like, Susan, you got to stop it. But she's like, there's no stopping it. I can steer him away, kind of minimize some of the damage, because they're going through with the whole plan of like how they're going to, I mean, it seems like I'm trying to understand whether or not they're completely going through with the plan they came up with in season 4 of like the whole using the robot things. It seems like they're not the implants. I'm still trying to understand if that's what they're doing, because at the very least, you know, because they're setting up, you know, 1,300 people to kind of be impregnated, and they're planning to use Kira's eggs, mainly because it's like they're trying to find out whether or not the healing gene is hereditary or not, like, you know, because like it got put into Lita's, but it didn't work on them, but it skipped over from Sarah. It skipped over Sarah and went to Kira, and as we can see with Helena, it went straight to her children too. So it's like, what's up with that, you know? So is it something that's like buried within the Lita's that can be passed down to children, even though they're all barren, you know, the mistakes being Sarah and Helena being able to give birth? Or, you know, that's what the whole point of it is, to test that out. But it's like, you're going to put a little girl through all of that. And that's like, Cosima's like, I'm drawing a line here. Also, interestingly enough, we end up seeing from Ira, like, he ends up saying something kind of off the wall, out there. It's like, oh yeah, the roof was red. And she's like, wait, what? She's like, wait, are you glitching? It's like, crap. So that's, like I said, like, I brought it up too last week's episode. Like, what's going to go down with him? Like I brought him and used him as marketing example. They're like the only two casters left. And it's like, it's always been about helping the Litas. And, you know, that's still going through its phases of like Cosima's getting treatment. She's doing good. Obviously, Rachel got the treatment this episode. So, and Westmoreland even being like, oh yeah, you deserve it more so than anyone. Because the thing I'm wondering about too with this whole Giannis situation is like, at the very end you captured Giannis, and it's like, oh, the poor thing just wanted to come back home. And it was like, you know, obviously Cosima's talking about how disgusted she was with what he did, and it's like, here, take the gun. You want to kind of act all high and moral. Here, you end his suffering, you know. Which she's like, I'm not gonna, you brought me into this world, I know you can take me out of it, but the fact of the matter is, I'm not gonna let you take my humanity. And he kills Giannis anyway. I guess because he wanted Giannis there, because it's like, yeah, like, because even Rachel was like, wouldn't it be easier just to kill it? But it's like, no, we need to, I guess in some twisted way, Westmoreland, you know, actually cared for Giannis in some shape or form. But more so the scientific side of like, we need him there to kind of really understand, like, oh, like, this is, you can learn from your past mistakes, essentially, like keeping it around. And probably was going to study him more. And I guess in a sense, this was a more merciful, this is probably the most mercy they've ever shown him in his entire life. And so what I kind of interpreted from that scene, but it's like, why'd you go? I guess just everything. He's just like, well, the fact of the matter is, I have you, Cosima, now, so I don't need Giannis anymore. It's like, we're moving into the final stages. We're going to be heading towards experimenting on Kira. So another interesting thing. I mean, it seems like I was right. Obviously, like last week's episode kind of set it up to be like, yeah, Westmoreland is sick. Whatever, like the whole longevity thing is total bullshit. He's not, because that was something like S was asking. the boys at the shop, well, the lab, to look into the whole Westmoreland thing, because it's like, oh, Westmoreland kind of disappears here, like almost like the late 1800s, almost 1900, early 1900s. He just disappears. Then all of a sudden, just, Neolution kind of pops up. Early, word of Neolution kind of pops up in like the 1950s, and it's like, okay, so I need you to find me some name, some proof to prove that this guy, the P.T. Westmoreland, is the same dude that's on this island. But it's like, no. It seems like that's not the case, because even Casima's like, yeah, that's total bullshit. Like, this whole, like, you being 170 is smoke and mirrors. You're a dude that's dying, that's keeping this... I don't know whether it's like someone passes the torch along each time. They'd be like, oh, we got to keep this whole P.T. Moreland thing alive to keep Neolution alive. So was it like P.T... Is he like P.T. Westmoreland's, like, descendant, so they keep up the lie or something like that? Is what I'm trying to understand. But definitely he's like lying, you're not immortal. Like, you never had longevity. Because even Casima kind of, there was a conversation he had about, I forgot who it was, but he got a detail wrong, and Casima was like, no, that didn't go down like that. And he's like, oh, yes, you're right. It's like, I guess that was her testing. Like, it's like, oh, kind of caught you in a lie. So I guess he just memorized a lot of old stuff that he should know and just feigned ignorance. I guess it's also like, because another side of it too, like, even if it's not like a Westmoreland family thing of like, oh, like from generation to generation pretending to be PT, what if it's actually like the sense that he's just a dude that's lying about it? Because it's like, if he says he's PT, more people will follow him and he'll just be able to get back to science with him. I don't know, because the fact of the matter is, like, does even Susan know about that whole situation, that he's not really, that old? So, I mean, Casima's figured it out. So it's like, does she know? I mean, for her, maybe it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's like, what matters is doing, this is her life's work too. I mean, she says it's Rachel, and she just wants, I don't know, that whole family dynamic's a little messed up and everything. So, I mean, it's not like they're the most normal family. And I was meant to bring it up earlier, but I kind of let it slip my mind again, is we kind of heard Casima's family kind of get brought up, which is interesting. Like, each of the others, we never really get to find out too much about their family. Obviously, we've learned a little bit about Sarah's, obviously back in season 1, we met her biological mother, but obviously her biggest, like, parental figure is S. Obviously, we've met Allison's mom. Granted, her dad came up in conversations, but we never actually met him. But now Casima's parents kind of came up, and Casima brings up the fact is that her parents still think she's at school and everything, and the fact is that her parents are professors and stuff like that, and it's like, no, we don't, I haven't talked to them in a while, but it's like, it's a relationship out of love, and we love each other. But the fact of the matter is, I haven't even told them I'm sick, because if I tell them I'm sick, that's eventually going to lead them being like, probably asking like, what happened? How are you sick? Have you gotten examined? And then it turns into the whole thing of having to break the whole clone secret to them. And it's like, basically that would do on everything. Like, all the happiness they had will kind of unravel, because it means like everything they've had was a lie, because it's like, I mean, I'm sure her parents would still look at her the same way of like, I don't care, you're still my daughter. But at the same time, it's like, oh, that this wasn't a real person. This was like a copy of someone's DNA. I think Casima kind of looks at it like that. I mean, that's the question. I mean, Allison kind of told her mom, but her mom was just kind of like about it anyway, because her mom's her mom. But like, how would Casima's family really react to it? I mean, it's kind of interesting at this point. They kind of bring them up. It's like, I've never thought about that the entire time I've watched this show. Never really thought, Casima's family. It never really came up to think about that. Even though like Allison's parents have come, or her mom has popped up and stuff. So it's just kind of interesting to me. But another kind of interesting thing to this episode, it seems like they're setting up, is the fact is that Sarah is letting Kira in a little more into the loop about what's going on. It's like, she's like, oh, you guys are whispering final guys. No, don't go upstairs. We'll tell you. We're up here trying to talk about Neolution, trying to find out more about where they started, and like trying to understand what they want now, what are their goals and plans. So trying to be a little more transparent with Kira, because that's all she wants. She, because it came up last episode, it's like, you can't keep Kira in the dark. Like, this is just as much about her than anyone else. She has to, like, she's born into this situation. Her mom is a clone. Her aunties are clone. Like, she's in smack dab in the middle of all of this. She needs to know, and it's because it's part of her life. It's understandable that Sarah wants to keep her as far away from it, but it's like, you can't, especially because she has all these questions about who she is and everything. So I do appreciate the fact is that Sarah is teaching her. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna be a hustler. It's like, oh gosh. Well, like as we last week's episode kind of showed, is like S is a hustler, and obviously so is Sarah. So it's like obviously that's gonna get picked up in some shape or form. I think Felix is kind of one too, isn't he? So I mean, kind of upbringing and stuff like that. Times get tough. It's kind of like you do what you can to survive type of thing. So. Like I said, like overall, like a very good episode. Definitely going very interested to see where it goes in the next episode because, like, obviously we know Westmoreland, quote unquote, Westmoreland is sick, and this is all about ultimately helping himself, feigning that it's all about other people too. I mean, it kind of is, but I think everyone is kind of like everyone plays their part in this situation for him. It's like all the people that are gathered around. Or maybe he's just trying to get, because obviously Neolution and everything, he's trying to get a big enough phone. Like I say, it's kind of interesting because Rachel kind of brought out the corporate side. We have not seen the corporate side of Neolution since the end of last season. They haven't popped up since dealing with the whole Evie Joe situation. So since Rachel kind of stepped up, we have, I guess the whole dyad situation kind of counts as that. We still, like I said, we still haven't seen all the way behind the scenes when it comes to that, but I don't know. Also, I haven't really got too much word into the whole Cody situation. Like I said, where we left her off last episode, obviously she's still got some secrets to tell. Got a little peek into Felix and Adele in dealing with the whole looking into Neolution thing that they're all doing. Obviously, heard a little bit about it. Also, I'm very curious to see what happens with this whole, because obviously the whole quid pro quo between Sarah and Kira is okay, you teach me this whole connection thing with the others. Let me learn how to kind of control that, and then I'll kind of let you in on the whole what we're really up to thing. So I'm wondering what kind of where that's going to how that's all going to play out. I'm still curious I think I brought this up earlier in this season, but obviously there's a whole thing last season where Kira had that nightmare that all the other sisters were burning Sarah because she had turned into a monster or something. I'm curious if that's still going to play a role. I feel like that was part of the whole bot thing in her mouth thing, but I'm still wondering, is there still room for that to be a thing, and maybe that's where some of this story might be heading. I don't know. That hasn't come up again subsequently since, so that might have just been a season 4 thing dealing with that whole thing. If she hadn't gotten out of her mouth, she would have turned into a monster. I don't know. I mean, especially with this whole quote unquote monster situations going on the island, makes you kind of go, maybe there's maybe there's more to that with the current circumstances. I don't know. Maybe not. So. But still, I'm very curious to see what will come about Sarah being able to tap into it, because it seems Sarah is the centerfold of everything. I mean, things have only gotten this far because Sarah and her sisters have worked together. So it's her and obviously Kira are in smack dab middle of all of this. So I'm just curious to see what that will do. I maybe it kind of taps into the ending. I was okay, so when it's all said and done, they go out there to kind of let other leaders know. I mean, at the end of the day, too, it makes you wonder, would they even tell other leaders about themselves? Because it's well, you don't need to know, because it's all we're going to do is turn people's lives upside down, let them live their lives and be happy. We don't need to kind of ruin their lives. So it might be one of the, like I said, I'm getting way ahead of myself, but I'm still kind of thinking, how is this all going to play out? How is this going to end? But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.